Thanks for joining us today for our webinar on mental health awareness for employees and supervisors. I'm Alex Terlecki with the Colorado Special District's Property and Liability Pool. Really glad to have everybody here today and see all of our members typing in the chat box here in attendance. In this 1-hour course today, we're going to cover essential topics related to mental health awareness in the workplace, including understanding mental health, recognizing signs and symptoms, legal and ethical considerations, self-care and stress management, and talk about the supervisor's role as well and provide some available resources. Today, we are joined by our presenter, Dr. Cynthia Broughton. Cynthia loves helping people and organizations imagine their highest potential and create actions to make it come to life. Cynthia has served as an executive and personal coach for over 20 years. She utilizes several coaching methodologies and individually tailored assessments to help clients maximize strengths and knowledge. Her extensive experience in executive level management in roles such as CFO, CAO, OD, and HR director allows her to provide strategic business consulting for organizational development and optimizing talent in a variety of industries. Her formal education includes a PhD in organizational systems and leadership development, an MA in psychology and stress management, and she is certified as a CPHR, a health and wellness coach, and in several coaching and assessment methodologies. So really excited to have her here to put on this presentation today on this really important topic. Before I pass things over, we're going to go over a few housekeeping items real quick. We're recording today's session, so if you have to step away or you're having technical difficulties, don't worry, we're going to send out a copy of that recording later today. A PDF of the slides are available to download in the box above the chat box called Files. You can go ahead and do that at any time. And we're going to take questions at the very end, but if you have any as we're going through the presentation, feel free to use the chat box. This should be a good opportunity to answer anything that's pressing or on your mind given this important topic. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Dr. Broughton. Thanks for being here today.
Hello. Thank you, Alex. Welcome to this mental health awareness presentation. I'm Cynthia Broughton, an executive coach and consultant for CPSHR. Because of my psychology background, this is a topic that I have prioritized when I've been in executive HR roles. I've really seen firsthand how the implementation of robust wellness and EAP programs are an asset to morale and culture in organizations. And we'll talk a little bit more about those kinds of resources at the end. I know that there are several agencies represented today. Some of you have put your agency in the chat box. Maybe let's take a moment and have everyone put who hasn't their agency in the chat box so that you can familiarize yourself with each other. I see a whole variety of districts and support services, community services. Great, thank you. Here's an overview of what we will be covering today. We'll go through gaining an understanding of mental health issues, the implications for the workplace, and we'll end with some takeaways for self-care. If you have any questions along the way, feel free to put them in the chat, and we will have a couple of breaks to take questions during the presentation as well. Mental health has direct impacts in the workplace. When employee mental health is suffering, there is a decline in productivity, performance, morale, and overall well-being of the workforce. There's an increase in absenteeism and presenteeism, which some of you may be familiar with and may not. It's basically people showing up to work but not being engaged. And depression, disability claims also go up. So let's just quickly look at some of the data that's related to the impact of mental health in the workplace. 1 in 4 workers experienced a mental health related illness last year. Mental health disorders cost the US economy over $200 billion in lost earnings per year. 80% of supervisors feel responsible for employee well-being, but often lack the training to address mental health issues. 60% of employees with a mental health condition don't seek help because of stigma and discrimination concerns. And this is a global issue. It's not just in the United States. The World Health Organization estimates that depression will be the leading cause of disability worldwide by 2030. So what are your thoughts about this data? If you want to throw them in the chat, I'd love to see your reaction to this. And was anybody surprised by these numbers? Yeah. So doesn't surprise. Interesting. So for some of you are surprised, some are not. And many of you may have seen the impact of mental health decline or stress and anxiety in the workplace. So let's take a minute to understand how we define mental health. It's a state of well-being in which an individual can cope with the normal stresses of life, work productively, and contribute to the community. So that means that we all have stress, we all have to navigate stress, but if we're thriving, we are managing our stressors, and we're still able to be productive, contribute to the community, and live fulfilling lives. So we have some common mental health conditions as represented by their prevalence. And of course, we can see stress and anxiety are the greatest contributors. And it's important to understand the difference between stress and anxiety. Stress is a temporary condition. It's a reaction to things that are really coming at us all the time. But when the stress becomes chronic, it creates anxiety, and it creates an ongoing anxiety that we can't seem to shake. Then we have, if this persists, or even from other sources, depression is very common. And then at the upper end of this pyramid, we have other mental health conditions, PTSD, grief, bipolar disorder. And PTSD is something that I think with COVID, we really saw an increase. So I have a question here of how stress becomes anxiety. So when we aren't able to handle our stress or understand our stress or respond in a productive way to our stress, or we feel that we cannot manage it, like that we have lost control, and we aren't able to control any of our reactions to stress, or maybe we're not feeling strong enough to make changes in our life. And so when we feel that we've lost control and that stress has become too great, that's when anxiety takes hold. Anxiety is something that, keeps us up at night. Anxiety, sometimes we don't even know why we're feeling anxious. Everything has just merged together. And it's a mixture of fear. Um, it's a mixture of loss of control. So it's not just a temporary reaction to something that's happening in our life. And really, with anxiety, we need to seek professional help. So, what are the signs and symptoms? And it's important for everyone in the workplace to be aware of the signs and symptoms in order to create a supportive work environment. Supervisors, especially, should be aware of behavior changes and take appropriate actions that we'll discuss later. And coworkers can notice things going on and maybe report them, if they have a concern about one of their fellow employees. The risk of stigma suppresses well-being as well as diminishes the creation of a supportive environment. Talking about stress, how organizational change creates anxiety, such as reorgs. We see that a lot in technology these days. The demands of the workplace impacting well-being and creating open discussions to support employees really helps to promote a stigma-free environment. And environments that have wellness programs that regularly have classes on stress management or discussion groups or other educational classes really help to open up that dialogue and help people to know that stress is normal and that we're all facing some sort of stressors every day. Have been a lot of layoffs lately. I know in technology there have been layoffs and reorgs, and it's important for the organizations to talk about the stress that those things are creating, to really acknowledge that this can be a very stressful time. And so people don't feel so just affected by something that they don't have any control over. I know that recently one of my clients who works for Salesforce, the management openly talked about the fact that they were having so many reorgs and how this was creating stress and anxiety and uncertainty for the employees. And they openly talked about it, which was really helpful. Supervisors are not mental health experts, but they play an important role in observing, balancing workloads and demands, creating an open and supportive environment, and encourage balance and personal well-being. Like, for instance, taking time off when people are sick or they need a break. Supervisors can encourage this. There are environments where people are actually afraid to take time off if they're sick, or they're hesitant to take vacation or time off when they need it and they need a break and spend time with their families. So supervisors really play an important part in either creating workplace stress or helping their employees navigate it. Supervisors have an opportunity at one-on-one check-ins, which should be happening on a regular basis, to check in on things that they're noticing and offer support, to really ask questions about how the employee is doing, to listen, to show empathy, to offer resource referrals, and to be flexible and supportive if an employee has a need, to figure out how they can support that employee, and also to ensure confidentiality so that whatever's happening with a particular employee, they feel comfortable going to their supervisor or going to HR, and they know that their situation will be treated with confidentiality. So they play a crucial role in noticing changes, noticing what's happening with employee behavior, again, checking in a private one-on-one, and really to familiarize themselves with the resources that are available. Does the organization have an EAP program? Do they have an EAP representative? What is the process to provide support and resources to the employee? If HR is not giving trainings on these topics, then managers should go to HR and find out. So this information is always treated with a need to know process. If someone is at risk of harming themselves or others, there is a process within HR to handle these situations. Otherwise, that the confidentiality has to be maintained. It's not something, even if other employees are worried about a particular coworker, it's not okay for the supervisor to disclose what's happening. And it can lead to some serious legal repercussions if confidentiality is not upheld. If a person has a medical condition, they're protected, and there are strict guidelines and processes for accommodation. Again, familiarize yourself with the HR processes, invite HR to come and give presentations to your teams, and so that employees know what resources are available to them. There are a lot of protective programs in place, and employers are required to provide reasonable accommodations when needed. So again, employers are obligated to make adjustments to accommodate employees with either mental health challenges or other physical challenges so that they can perform their job duties effectively. And the key word here is reasonable. Can something be done that's a reasonable adjustment to help? And HR, again, is the place to go to identify and to work through these situations. So there are a lot of resources that typically are in place. I'm wondering how many of your organizations have wellness programs in place, or do you have EAP staff that are tasked to deal with these issues? Sometimes there are parent organizations or other organizations that are set up to support in these areas. If an enterprise is so small that they can't have their own EAP services or workplace wellness, they can collaborate with others. Is anybody aware of programs in place? Okay, great. EAP, peer support program, and a chaplain, that's great. So it's really important for supervisors to meet with those people and really understand what is the process. If I have an employee that I'm concerned about, what do you suggest? What's the process that I should use? 24 hours. Health insurance. Yeah, a lot of the health insurance carriers now have mental health, they have wellness programs. People can join support groups or gyms. Local entities, counseling services, perfect. EAP, wellness benefit, local resources, great. So again, it's important to familiarize yourself with these things, and also to know in the community, are there helplines? Do local hospitals have support groups? So it's important to know where someone can get help. Great. So at this juncture, should we take a minute and address some questions? We're going to move on to stress management, which is kind of the precursor. So as we said, if stress gets out of hand, it turns into anxiety, can turn into depression. So it's important to take care of it at the lowest level. Does anybody have any concern about mental health in the workplace, and maybe any concern with external changes or organizational changes and how those might impact the workforce? I see some people are typing, but I don't see the chat yet coming up. Okay, so let's see. We're working on an update. Internal drivers and our system not considered as a source of stress. Yeah, it's interesting that so many changes in the workplace that one might not think are that impactful, or that it's a good change, something that will help people. But really, any change is stressful. People are anxious about the learning curve of change. They're anxious about. It's amazing that even if internal changes are not putting people's jobs at risk, it's the first go-to. People worry that they're going to lose their job. I've always been very surprised to hear that's the first go-to. Even with organizational changes where no jobs are at risk, people are afraid of losing their jobs. If your sick leave policy allows for mental health days off, how do you present this for fear it will be misused? So when employees have a bucket of leave, right, they have leave that's allocated to them either for sick use, mental health, well-being, caring for others, caring for people in their family, or vacation. It's not for the supervisor to ask about details. If someone needs to take a sick day, that's it. We don't need to know why they're taking a sick day. We don't need to know what's going on with them. If they specifically say, I want to use a mental health day, fine. We don't ask questions about it. But they may not say that. They may not admit that it's for mental health. They might just say, I need a wellness day, or but I think it's important to let employees know that their leave is used for a combination of things. So they have a bucket of leave, and it can be used for a variety of purposes that that the employees should know that they can use it for a variety of purposes. And it doesn't matter what the purpose is, they don't need to disclose why they're using their leave. I think that a lot of employees just assume that they need to tell their supervisor, oh, I have a cold, or oh, I have the flu, or, I'm not feeling well. They don't need to even say that. All they need to do is say, I'm taking a sick day. And so I think supervisors can encourage employees to not disclose that supervisors don't need to know the detail. And I think it's really up to the supervisor to tell the employees, I don't need to know the details. This is your time, you can take it. So I think that really helps employees. I know some leaders that I've coached, they really had to almost retrain their team to not give them too much information. They don't need to know the details. And yeah, I like that, Lisa, that it's a day for whatever they need it for. It's their time and they can use it as they need. But employees are generally afraid. They're afraid to take sick days even when they're sick. They're afraid that the supervisor is going to think poorly of them, or that somebody's not going to believe them. I can tell you that this is very common, and it's kind of surprising. Let's see, did I address? Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about stress and anxiety. Supervisors really, the way that they balance workloads, the way that they set expectations, the expectation of schedules. I know that when people are on salary, there are managers who expect people to work 12 hours a day. They expect people to, respond to email now that everybody's working remote, off hours or on the weekends. So really check, if you're a supervisor, really check what do you really need from the employee and what do you not need, and what might be causing them stress and anxiety that really isn't required. So here's why we need to manage stress. Stress management is crucial for maintaining physical and mental health, improving your relationships, enhancing overall well-being, and building resilience to life challenges. Bottom line is that it empowers individuals to lead healthier, happier, and more productive lives. So we all know that there is a physiological response to stress. And the reason that many people are impacted physiologically by stress is that we're turning on the stress response inappropriately. So the stress response is a physiological response that is innate in our bodies and minds, that we can respond if there's an emergency, right? We can save our life or somebody else's if needed. But unfortunately, we're turning on the stress response inappropriately 100 times a day. Maybe there's traffic. Maybe someone said something to us that was upsetting. Maybe we're running late, or we have too many things to do. So these are not appropriate reasons to elicit the stress response. It's not a time where we need to save our life or someone else's. And so that's why stress is actually a contributor to pretty much all diseases and health conditions, because it creates a dysfunction in our body's ability to function. So our digestive system turns off, our reproductive system turns off, our blood pressure goes up. The blood flow becomes very chaotic and volatile. And so we're not really able, our body isn't able to function when we're stressed. All of that is basically been turned off. So when that happens day after day, this is how chronic health conditions are created. So I know there are a lot of resources these days for managing stress. We have apps on our phone. We have sleep apps to help us fall asleep. We have meditation apps. There are a lot of other things that we can do to manage our stress, and we'll talk about these. This slide might be a little hard for some of you to read, but basically the thought behind this is that well-being is not just physical or mental health. It also is our emotional health, our spiritual health, social, vocational, financial, environmental. So these are all dimensions of our well-being. And we have to care for all of these dimensions because we're a living system. And if you poke a system in one side of this diagram, it's going to be impacted in all the other dimensions. And many of you probably have experienced this. If you have a financial setback, does that create emotional stress and mental stress, maybe even some physical problems like digestive issues or lack of sleep? So you can see that we really have to care for all of the dimensions of our wellness. And here's when we react to stress. So this is exactly what I just explained, that when stress impacts one part of our life, we have life events and stressors pushing against us, and an impact in any one dimension will disrupt other areas and cause a system imbalance. So we can divide stress reduction and coping strategies into two categories: cognitive and lifestyle. We have to spend time learning methods and integrating them in order to effectively manage stress. We have to actively participate in this every day. As you can see, that these areas make up all of our wakeful moments. We all need help and support to learn these strategies and to be able to incorporate them successfully. So as you look through the list, these are great ideas for if your organization has leadership development courses, wellness classes, or any personal development education. If you have a wellness program, you can offer education and training in these areas. So this is something that if you think about, like even just looking at the cognitive list, conflict resolution skills, boundary setting, asking for support, positive self-talk. So we have this little voice in our head that's talking to us all the time. And so we're in control. Are we going to let it tell us negative things, or are we going to let it tell us positive things? So what is the meaning of my life, and what are my values? Setting goals and using my strengths. Do I even know what my strengths are? When we're using our strengths, our life becomes much more effortless. So if you look at these lists, then we have the lifestyle pieces of this. This pretty much makes up our whole day. These are things that we can put into place every day, many times a day. So we always have an opportunity to turn things around. But we need support, we need education and training, and this can give you some ideas for your wellness programs. So turn off said electronic devices. Yes, I see that. So what can you say about some of these strategies? And are these areas that any of your organizations uh, support employees in? Do you have educational classes to help your employees with these things? I know some organizations do strengths, like the Strengths Finder or the DISC training or Myers-Briggs, things like that. Those are really helpful in helping people find their strengths and use them. Okay. So stress management at work. Again, organizations have opportunities to provide education and training in the topics on the previous slide. But supervisors can also help to reduce stress in a variety of ways. As we talked about, encouraging employees to use their leave, providing training for some of the topics on the previous slide. But what about maintaining balanced workloads and schedules? I see this so frequently where employees are completely stressed out because the workloads are just not realistic. And even the schedules that they're being asked to work aren't realistic sometimes. So helping the teams set realistic goals. Empowerment, I think, is also a great strategy for supervisors to become trained in being an empowering leader. So what does that mean? Leaders often have trouble delegating work, or they delegate work and they micromanage, right? Because they haven't really delegated it. So when a supervisor is truly empowering, they will create ownership within the team and they'll let the team make decisions. They'll let teams be autonomous and own their projects. And empowerment really creates greater engagement. So when employees don't feel like they have control over their work, or they don't feel like they have a say in how things are done, it really hinders their engagement, their morale, and their productivity. So the more empowering a supervisor can be, the happier and more productive their teams will be. Also being available and offering consistent support and guidance. So when supervisors are empowering and they do delegate, it doesn't mean that they aren't there to help resolve problems, help support teams, help provide technical expertise, remove obstacles, things like that. So is that an area that any of your organizations have worked with, creating greater empowerment and within the teams? I'm curious because I really see that a lot with teams that have managers who micromanage. The teams are completely stressed out. That's great, Carrie. So how have you learned to make decisions as a team? I think that's something that is very challenging for a lot of people. So maybe you can share a little bit about how you got there. Yeah, so everybody's contributing something unique. And it sounds like you honor these unique perspectives. So somebody might have a different idea or a different way, a different approach, and we have to be open and receptive to that. That's a topic I really love teaching as well. So how do we find balance and peace? We all have activities that resonate personally, and we have trial and practice to find them and incorporate them regularly. Having that thing that you really enjoy, that lifts you up, that brings you peace, that helps you relax. It could be something social, it could be something exercise related or a hobby, or something solitary, but it's really important to find those moments that we can rejuvenate. It's important to have social support, so we can't live in a vacuum. And the value of social support is enormous. Often people who are suffering with distress will isolate. It's the first thing we do when we're feeling a little bit down. But it's through socially supportive activities that we will thrive and realize that we're not alone in our distress. So it's important to have your personal network, to create support networks at work through either programs, workplace wellness programs, and then also for supervisors to really develop an open relationship, with their team members. So it doesn't mean that you have to get into the nitty gritty of their personal life, but to just be available, to notice if someone is having a hard day. You don't really, need to know all of their business, or, become their therapist, but to just be empathetic with people and to notice what's going on with your teams is really important. Encouraging people to seek professional help. I think the stigma around therapy has really changed, hopefully. And now that there are a lot of coaches and there are lots of health and wellness coaches, people can be more receptive to going to a coach than to going to a therapist. And I know that a lot of the other coaches that I know have backgrounds in psychology or therapy, as I do. And people can feel like they're more in a partnership, I think, with a coach. So let's take a few minutes for any further questions or comments you might have. Is there anything that we didn't address, or do you have questions that you were hoping that you would find answered today? So I'd like to see in the chat what your one takeaway is. Like, what's the one thing that occurred to you that you either might want to either do for yourself or for your organization or for your team, or you might something that you might want to check into. What's your one takeaway? Let's all put something in the chat for our one takeaway. And it can just be a thought. Normalizing mental health days, yes. Yes, you don't have to have a mental health condition to need a mental health day, right? So some days we're just drained, we're stressed, and we just need a break. We need a mental break sometimes. Be aware of ourselves and others, yes. You know, to just not be marching through our day and our week without lifting our head and noticing what's going on with ourselves or people around us. Get your EAP set up, absolutely. So I've been in large organizations and small organizations, and you know, there have been some serious events that EAP needed to help with, but there has also been just, you know, maybe somebody who's burdened with taking care of a family member that needed EAP support. So every supervisor should have that in their back pocket. And if they need to meet with HR to get that information, it's important. Yes, don't ask about sick leave details. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't mean we don't care just because we don't ask about, you know, what's wrong with them or how are they feeling or what is their illness. Working together, yeah. We're in this soup pot together, so we might as well help each other. How they're doing, yeah, on a personal. So the one-on-one check-ins that supervisors have, you know, it's a nice place to just say, you know, how are things going for you? And the employee can decide whether they want to answer that with regard to work or they want to answer that with regard to something else that's going on in their life. Yeah. Encourage that. Yes. Yes, exactly. And to even tell employees, you don't need to tell me why you're using this, or you don't need to give me the details, to really encourage employees to not feel that pressure. Great. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yep. Self-care day. You can even, you know, create some kind of lingo around it, right? That, you know, employees can take a self-care day. And that really feels inviting, I think, for people who are timid around asking for time off. Okay, so any last questions or comments? I know this was a really big topic. There's lots of areas to dive into and to find out a little more about. There's a ton of resources, and even using AI these days, we can get a lot of information. So thank you for letting me present and for joining me today. Please reach out if I can provide any further information or support.
All right, fantastic. We'll just pause here for a second if there are any last-minute questions. Thank you, Cynthia, very much for putting this on today. Learned a lot from this and really great strategies involved too. So thanks again.
Great. Thank you for having me.
Of course. And while we're waiting for any comments or questions to come through the chat box, I just want to thank Cynthia again and our presenters at CPS HR Consulting. For any of our members that are on our webinar today, we do offer 10 hours of free HR consulting sessions with CPS HR Consulting, and they perform a wide variety of tasks, like helping with job postings, HR trainings, candidate screenings, policy reviews, employee relations. If you'd like to learn more about them, you can head on over to our website at the link in the chat box there. And in addition, we'll be back next month for our July webinar, just in a couple weeks, and we will be talking about understanding the Colorado Power Act, which is new employee legislation that went into effect in 2023. If you'd like to sign up, you can head on over to our Eventbrite page and reserve your spot there. So without seeing any other questions come through, we'll go ahead and wrap up for today, a couple minutes early. Again, thank you very much, Cynthia, for being here, and thank you to our membership for spending some time with us today.
Great. Thank you for having me. Bye.
Bye, everybody. Have a nice day.